in Ukraine continues at full speed. The alarms that sounded due to the attacks in Ukraine do not stop. Although the Ukrainian army seems to be the superior side in Ukraine where the balance is constantly changing, it is clear that it needs more help. If Ukraine wants to make a breakthrough, it will need more tanks. While commenting on the matter, Dan Saba defense and security editor said Britain is sending 14 tanks and other countries may send more soon, but experts say Kiev needs around 100 tanks. Tanks arguably decided the First World War after 4 years of its stalemate and were indispensable throughout the Second World War. However, one of the surprising features of the war after the initial Russian invasion is that it was not a dramatic war of VE, but only remotely shifting war. But Kiev is under pressure to find the breakthrough that spring as the Russians try to strengthen their positions perhaps before another offensive, as NATO is reluctant to assist Ukraine with combat air pop, for now, the lies in the heavily armored tank and that the West is finally ready to. Britain will send a fleet of 14 Challenger 2 tanks, and Poland wants to send 14 more German-made Leopard TOS if Berlin increasingly likely a lawsuit. This is a start, but well behind Ukraine's pre-Christmas demand for 300 tanks and at least 600 weeks, about 90 of which have been commit. Nick Rex, a ground warfare expert at a think tank, said that only tanks have protection, mobility, and firepower to maintain momentum even when they come into contact with powerful enemy forces. Welcome to Politics News Wolf US channel. The question, however, is which number will give Kiev a chance to launch its own attack? Experts at the International Institute for Strategic Studies said last week that they believe the answer is around 100. And what Ukraine's war plans are for the spring of 2023. The war plans are probably maximalist, in line with the public statements of their leaders calling for the expulsion of the occupying Russians through re-establishment of the borders before 2014, and thus, the recapture of all eastern DBAs and Crimea. Ukraine has suffered enough with at least 7,000 civilian deaths since Russia's invasion last February. Finding a way to end hostilities on terms that do not leave a regional victory for the Kremlin, which now occupies 1/6 or more of its territory in a desperate path, and Western supporters must act before their patience and ammunition stacks run out. All of this makes it clear that the UK's 14 Challenger 2 donations are not enough on there. And that even if it wants to go further than the UK's nominal stockpile of 227 units, it alone will not provide anything comparable to the volume required. This is where the German-made Leopard 2 comes in, which is more plentiful across Europe and more capable than the Soviet-era tank Ukraine now. There are just over 2,300 Leopard 2 tanks and held by the armies of 13 NATO countries according to IISS, but at least 300 are in storage and many others are worthy of being sent in a depressing state of repair. Spain's tanks were considered very bad last summer. However, there are enough tanks to reach 100. Even few more countries come forward. Finland is thought to be willing, but that alone is not enough. If German Chancellor Olaf Scholz make the final decision to allow them to be re-exported, the history of the Second World War hangs heavily over Germany, but Score's coalition partners, the Greens and the Liberal FDP, have already signaled support for such a move. The Chancellor has authorized the supply of 40 Marder compact vehicles, which means the deployment of the Leopards is just one step away. Expert IISS say it may take 3 to 6 weeks for Ukrainian soldiers to gain a basic proficiency in operating Leopard 2s, which will be similar for Challenger 2s. The real test, though, will be whether Kiev develops a plenty effectively used tanks with artillery, clear the road, and infantry to protect armor and clear fortified physic. General Mark Milley, the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, has announced a comprehensive training program for nearly 500 Ukrainian soldiers for what is known in the military as combined weapons. He just suggested it would take 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks for such a program to take effect, and perhaps gave a clue as to what was to come and when. In the latest hot news, Britain will help Ukraine despite the temporary weakening of its own. Sending tanks and artillery to Ukraine will significantly boost the country's war effort, but will temporarily weaken the British Army. Statements expressed by British Army Commander General Patrick Send on Monday stress the need to restore the combat capability of British troops as soon as possible. General Sir Patrick Sanders says Ukraine will could use British donations to fight Russia. The British Army commander also said that ensuring Russia's defeat in Ukraine made us safer at the same time. According to him, the transfer of an important military aid package for the Ukrainian armed forces would also leave the British Army temporarily weak. That's why it's vital that the Army's fighting capability be quickly restored. He said, the British commander said, there is no doubt that our choice will affect our ability to mobilize the Army against the acute and persistent threats posed by Russia and meet our NATO obligations. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace on Monday unveiled the most important military aid package to accelerate Ukraine's success in the war with Russia. At the same time, he told British MPs that the military needs to be reinvested. British Prime Minister wishes TAC said his country together with its allies and partners will ensure that the Ukrainians will defend and win the war. The British Prime Minister said we are stepping up our support for Ukraine with the UK's most important power package to date. Sunk noted that his country is working intensively with its allies and partners. We will enable the Ukrainians to defend themselves, use their advantage when this war and achieve lasting peace. Son. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has unveiled the most important military aid package to accelerate Ukraine's success in the war with Russia. At the same time, he told British MPs that the military needs to be reinvested. According to Wallace, the new package will include a fleet of Challenger 2 tanks, AS-90 guns, 100 armoured and protected weeks, a maneuver support package, dozens more UNC crude air systems, 100,000 artillery shells, hundreds of advanced missiles including Starstreak air defense missiles. President Zelensky thanked Britain for the military aid package. Zelensky said on social media tanks, APCs, and artillery are exactly what Ukraine needs to restore its territorial integrity. He thanked British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Defence Secretary Ben Voice, and the British people for their strong contribution to the joint victory over Tehran. As reported, the UK has announced the most important military aid package for Ukraine. The new package will include a fleet of Challenger 2 tanks, 890 guns, 2 additional batteries in the viable readiness, 100 armoured and protected vehicles, including Bulldog personnel carriers, a maneuvering support package, including minefield crossing and bridge building capabilities, £28 million. Dozens of Incred air systems worth £20 million, 100,000 artillery shells, hundreds of more sophisticated missiles to support Ukrainian artillery. Thank you for watching the video. If you find it useful, please comment and share the video for us. It will make our channel more known. See you in the following videos. Thank you very much.